Hi, welcome to the last part of this 6 segment soul series. We have talked about past life, trauma, early childhood trauma. We have talked about soul imprints and soul fragments, karma and soul patterns, relationship with the self and others. And now we are talking about compassion and forgiveness. So, in this segment, I'm going to give you a scenario. It's like a little story that's going to really help you understand how our emotional feelings play out in our relationships with ourselves and others. So there's a girl, she's giving a dinner party. She's having about 7 of her good girlfriends over. One of her friends decides to help. So let's call the girl that's entertaining, we'll call her Amy. The girl that offers to help, we'll call her Mary. So Mary comes over early on the day of this dinner party, and they are both running around trying to get everything done, and they're having a good time doing it, and everything's great. But then it starts to get a little hectic because it's getting closer and closer to the time that the rest of the guests are going to arrive. And Amy starts to get nervous. So she starts basically getting a little bit more demanding and says to Mary, "The butter's frozen. I forgot to take it out." She goes into a panic. She says to Mary, "Can you melt this in the microwave for me just to get it soft?" And Mary's like, "Sure, no problem." So she puts it in the microwave and then she goes off and does something else. She basically forgets about the butter and doesn't realize that it's melting away. When she goes back to the butter and she sees that it's basically now soup, not butter, she tells Amy, and Amy gets very upset. She snaps. Now, what Mary doesn't realize that when Amy snapped, it's because Amy's carrying a soul imprint of fear of criticism. So her ego, in order to balance that, her ego, in order to protect those feelings of criticism and fear of being a failure, the ego sets her up as a perfectionist. So when the perfectionist gets challenged, the ego gets upset because the ego is all about survival. It's about always making sure that there's no criticisms, that there's no sense of failure. It's a protector. And now Mary has triggered that ego and caused the ego to snap. Now Mary shuts down and becomes very, very sad over that. But now she wants to basically jump in and try to save it. So she says, "I'll fix it, I'll do something about it, or we can just dip it in oil," whatever she says. But in the meantime, now there's tension between Mary and Amy. What Amy doesn't understand is Mary's carrying an imprint of feeling unappreciated. Because as a child, whenever she tried to help, she was basically told she can't do it right. So she always felt unappreciated for her efforts. So her protector part is, I must do things for others to gain appreciation for who I am. I have to be the pleaser. I have to overplease. And that's why she's the one that jumped up and volunteered to help out Amy at the party. She was looking for validation of someone who could please others and be validated as being appreciated. So what she really needed from Amy was, "I so appreciate you for coming here early, helping me out with this big party I'm having, and I really appreciate what you're doing." But she didn't get that, and she was looking for that. What she got was snapped at. So she went right back to that fear of being unappreciated. But you also have Amy that also has to be the perfectionist because her protector part, her ego consciousness says everything has to be perfect because I can't be criticized. So now we have tension, and neither one of them realizes is that they just triggered each other. Now, what's going to happen is Mary's going to seek out some kind of release. She needs validation for her efforts as a pleaser to come over early to do what she did to help out and to be criticized. So she starts complaining to the other guest as in private. Now there's tension with everybody because she's complaining in secret to a few of the friends. Oh, I came over. I, went out of my way. I am the pleaser. I do everything for everybody, but nobody ever appreciates me. So she's basically looking for validation that she did the right thing and that Amy was wrong. So now she's causing tension. But now Amy needs to fix her side of the story. So she begins to start talking about, oh, dinner is great. Everybody's saying it's great. And then she puts out the butter and she apologizes for it. And she says, I'm sorry. I gave this to Mary to do, but evidently Mary totally forgot about it. So she's trying to justify that she's still the perfect entertainer. Now there's tension among all the people. So what are we seeing here in this scenario? What we're not seeing is understanding. We're not seeing compassion. And it seems that Mary and Amy are holding back on forgiveness because it's not because Amy is really upset with Mary. She's upset with herself. She's upset with that other part of her that feels criticized. She's angry at the part of her that can't do things right. Mary is not really upset with Amy. She's angry at the part of her that can't do anything right. And that's why she's never appreciated. It still comes down to this feeling of unworthiness for both of them. So they triggered each other. So what is really forgiveness? Forgiveness is not about really forgiving the other person. Forgiveness is about forgiving yourself for allowing somebody else to cause you to feel bad about yourself. So in other words, Mary forgot about her own true divine consciousness and how what a perfect being she is. Even if she accidentally melted the butter, she's still a perfect divine being. Yes? Amy forgot about her value, that even if she served melted butter or said, I don't have any other butter, but here I froze this a little bit, here's some oil, I'm sorry, but I'm sure we'll have a great time anyway. She couldn't do that. She couldn't forgive herself for not being perfect. She had to be perfect. Mary had to be appreciated because they didn't see their own value. So the whole idea about this is for you. In any time that somebody makes you feel bad about yourself, it's not about saying, hey, I forgive you for doing that. The first thing you want to do is say, I forgive myself for questioning my own value. I forgive myself for allowing another person to cause me to believe I am not of divine consciousness and a perfect being. Because other people are really just projecting out their own inner fears. So when we realize that, all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. It's forgiving the self for forgetting our own value. So when somebody triggers us and somebody upsets us and gets into that ego consciousness and it feels like an attack on our ego and we feel like we have to defend ourselves, that's a time to forgive yourself and say there's nothing to defend. Okay? I'm not a perfect human being on this planet. I make mistakes, but I am a perfect divine consciousness. I'm a perfect soul. So, which makes me a perfect living being because we're not here to be perfect human beings. We're here to learn from our mistakes and to remember that we're a perfect divine consciousness here to make those mistakes and to learn from them and still come back and say, wow, where did that go wrong? And that's okay. I'm still a divine consciousness. I'm still a perfect being. And that was a good lesson. Don't leave the butter in so long, right? Another divine lesson is don't run around like a lunatic. And when somebody comes around and helps you, be appreciative of it, right? So these are all the things we're just here to learn. These are all the parts of us that are perfect, that are here to learn, that divine consciousness, having that human experience. So it comes down to having compassion. Have compassion for yourself, because at that moment that you let somebody make you devalue yourself, because at that moment you forgot your value. Okay, at that moment that you forgot what a perfect being you are, because you started questioning it when somebody tackled your ego. You started questioning your value. So you're forgiving yourself, but you're also having compassion for the other person who did snap at you, or who did do something that was not out of kindness or wasn't showing you love. Forgive them, because they're also in that space of not valuing themselves, because they're projecting something onto you, some kind of inner fear. So have compassion for them. Have compassion for yourself, because you had to be a part of that. But always forgive yourself any moment that you question your value. And then you could forgive their soul for questioning their value. Maybe you don't want to say, I forgive the act, because the act was uncalled for, but it's still just an act of human behavior. It's a part of the learning experience. It still comes down to, I forgive myself, because in that moment, I forgot my value. I forgive your soul, because you, in that moment, you forgot your value. If you needed to snap at me, as Mary might say to Amy, if you needed to snap at me, you're questioning your value. If I had to react to that, I'm questioning my value. So it still comes down to self-forgiveness, self-compassion, compassion for others, and forgiveness of the soul. Okay, not forgiveness because I forgive you for what you did. It's just forgiving that soul for them forgetting their own value in the moment, for them not loving themselves in that moment, for them being stuck in that consciousness of fear of not good enough, causing you to feel like you're not good enough. So all forgiveness again is self-forgiveness, right? We're all forgetting our value in that moment that the ego comes in and feels attacked, or when the ego has to attack another. Because if we weren't in ego, but we were only in our true divine consciousness, there would be that understanding, that kindness, that love feeling, that automatic forgiveness. There wouldn't be a fight with the ego. We would be in that true divine consciousness that has all of that loving compassion and understanding of what's truly going on when somebody does fall into the ego consciousness. And that is part of our growth. I know it's easier said than done, but that's why we're here. We're here to learn this stuff, and we're here to grow into that and evolve into that understanding. So I hope that this video was very helpful for you. And I hope you enjoyed the series. And I hope that you continue to watch this channel for more videos on being that soul consciousness, having a human experience. Sending you off with many blessings, and never forget that every moment of every lifetime is an opportunity to heal your soul burdens and live like the miracle you are. Give yourself some love, give your soul some compassion today, and many blessings.